So, welcome to this edition of the Movement Prescription Podcast. Now, for those of you that listen to our podcast, you know that we're here to help inspire, promote, and connect with the various voices in terms of physical activity and movement. But today's guest is not our usual guest. We've had professors, we've had athletes, we've had kind of all sorts in terms of the healthcare sector and movement. But we haven't had a comedian on yet, so this is fantastic. And you may be wondering, why do we have Russell Kane, a well-known British comedian, on today? Well, that's because he is, one, a colleague of mine at Steph's Packed Lunch, but two, during our time on the show, I learned a great deal about Russell's health beliefs, the way that he practices his lifestyle, and I think a lot of it will resonate with what we talk about and help us connect with our patients, which is, at the end of the day, kind of the main role. Russell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, well, I mean, laughter is the best medicine, so it's long overdue.
I totally agree.
I will just say in brackets, sometimes amoxicillin is more appropriate.
Well, to be honest,
I wouldn't just laugh at an oozing pustule. It's probably won't fix it.
Yeah, it may not have the evidence base compared to amoxicillin. I give you that. But what I wanted to find out was, for a lot of us, when we're trying to communicate with patients, you know, it can be really difficult to get across that we want them to become more active, and to do that in a non-judgmental way and in a way that they understand, in a language that makes sense. Why do you think so far messaging has been ineffective in getting people active? And, you know, can you see a role of potentially comedy or just making it a bit more lighthearted to make it more effective?
So, yeah, two questions there, the comedy and why has it failed? So the first question I liken to my friends that have attempted to quit smoking, or maybe you've got family members that have attempted to quit alcohol or some other problematic behaviour. It's all very well being ready to make change, and I'm ready to, you know, my BMI is unhealthy, or I'm pre-diabetic, I'm ready to make change. If you are then locked in a cake shop with your best intentions, you're going to have more issues than someone who is locked on a vegan hummus farm. What I'm trying to say in a humorous and colourful way is, until, this is way beyond the remit of this podcast and GPs, until we change the environment or make an effort to shape the environment that people are living in, this challenge is very, very difficult. It's possible. You can take control of your health and your health span, my favourite word of the year, meaning the number of years of which we're vital. Whether you live at 60 or 120, to me, is uninteresting. It's the percentage of those years that we are vital, active, alive, feeling youthful, excited, springing out of bed. But if we do not change the environment in the same way that we stopped smoking in pubs and comedy clubs, you are asking a lot of time-poor, tired people who don't all have psychotic willpower that I have and that Iron Men have, in order to change their lives. And that is an overall thing that the health industry could help with. Why is it acceptable to have a black oozing lung on a cigarette packet, but a smiling, friendly, fluffy character on a chocolate bar? I was watching another doctor yesterday being interviewed by Stephen Bartlett, and you're 4 times less likely to drop down early from all causes from smoking than you are from being overweight and not exercising. You're literally better off being an Iron Man jogging smoker than you are a Twix eating telly watcher. Now, if I was to light up in front of my family, in front of my overweight family, they'd be like, what are you doing? You've got a family. Yet that same overweight family would happily stuff chocolate bars, not realising that it's literally 4 times more deadly to be overweight, visceral fat, belly fat. That is an education job. Education is needed because education fuels willpower. If someone says, if you don't learn French by the end of the week, oh, no, everyone's going to think you're rubbish at language. Who cares? If you don't learn French by the end of the week, one of your family members are going to get shot. Trust me, you'll be in the past tense. The motivation has got to be there. And the information, knowing that you're beckoning the Grim Reaper over with a crunchy wrapper, would do that.
That's spot on. And like like it's very obvious there. Like I know it, but people listening, from the terms that you're using, it's clear that you know a lot about medicine. To be fair, like you know the terminology, you know the important factors. Even just, for example, visceral fat. I wonder how many people even understand what that is.
Yeah.
And is that because you've educated yourself and therefore now you understand the importance more, or it's just always been something you've worried about?
It's like someone who gets into watercolors or pottery or studies marine animals. Everyone's like, oh, we haven't even explored our oceans. We only know 1% of the universe. But I find the human body so exciting. We barely, we've got amazing things and amazing doctors and amazing machines. But I think how they'll laugh at us in 1,000 years. They'll laugh crying at what we do not yet know. It's not our fault. No one's doing anything wrong. We can't help it. We're living in 2023. We're not living in 2123 or 2223 when hopefully they'll have all these amazing scanners and medicines and pills. So I explore the human body through books and podcasts and speaking to my medical friends the same way someone else might get amateurly into scuba diving and oceanography. It was just a pastime mixed with I got success late. I didn't start getting a following and a big career till I was in my mid-30s, and I've got this Lee Evans high energy, hyperverbal act mixed with I'm wearing a Fitbit on stage now. I burn approximately 700 to 800 calories in 70 minutes. Thousands of steps. Heart rate starts at 59. By the time I'm announced to go on stage, I'm at 110. I get up to 160 sometimes while I'm on. So I was getting tired when I was in my mid-30s. As you should. You can't expect to do at 25 what you could do at 35, I used to believe. Well, what a load of codswallop that's turned out to be. I'm more productive, more energetic, stronger and fitter now. There's inevitable. Death is inevitable. Even decline is inevitable. But the steepness of that decline is not inevitable. Don't listen to all your Elon Musks and we can live to 200 in a rocket and not age. Obviously bollocks, certainly within our great-grandchildren's lifetime. Who knows what technology will be invented. But can you stop the curve at which you become overweight? You slow down. You don't want to play with your kids. You wake up laughing at the people going to Ibiza, going, I remember when I was young. I refuse to be that person. I'm going to Ibiza twice this year. And it's done through very basic methods. The holy, let's call it the quadrinity.
Yep.
Diet, movement, sleep, evidence-based supplementation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we connected. 'Cause I remember, like, in the middle of an advert break when we're on TV, you came over and then you started talking about health span and longevity, and I was like, do you know what? This is a field that I work in, but I've never heard just a lay person with the sort of knowledge that you have, the understanding that you have,
passion.
And I wonder,
it's a self-interested passion. It's funny you should just say that, because you've accidentally given the first brilliant example of what anyone listening to this can do. Stand up during an ad break. Notice I didn't say diet and exercise. Diet and movement. I don't have gym membership. I live in a studio flat. I stay in travel lodges. I sleep in single bed hotels. I never go to a gym and I never miss a workout. The first thing you can do next time the YouTube ads roll, next time ITV ads roll, stand up during an ad break. It seems so pathetic, but it's something. Just start with standing during the ads. If you're someone who's never exercised in your life, starting small is one of the tips. I'm conscious I've not answered your humour question, by the way.
No, don't worry. No. But I think you're spot on. And the evidence supports that, in the sense that even breaking up sedentary activity for a few minutes can be really beneficial for physical health. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
And just, Ed, if you are blessed with absorbing this stuff like I am, share it with your loved ones of the generation before. It's not their fault. They were brought up on old NHS recommendations of piles of white potatoes and healthy whole grains. The problem is, yes, a whole grain can be very healthy. I've got a beautiful Biona rye bread in my fridge. I've got brown bread made with 3 ingredients. But some healthy whole grains are loaded with sugar and God knows what else. You're better off having a Mars bar and stop lying to yourself.
Yeah. The processing, isn't it? And is that the challenge? Because these things are, like, for example, even many ultra-processed foods are marketed in a way that seems healthy, that the standard person can't interpret what is and what isn't healthy.
I always think the best rule is, if your great-grandma wouldn't recognise the food or the ingredients on the side, it's probably processed.
Yes.
I don't mean foreign, like you're going, well, my great-grandma wouldn't recognise curry. What's happened to Britain? But I mean the number of ingredients. So if you turn your bread over and it says spelt flour, salt, yeast, water, if you resurrected your great-grandma, she would know what that is. Totally. If you are from another culture and you saw turmeric, onions and garlic, they would know what that is. They wouldn't recognise guar, gum, maltodextrin and all this other stuff that crops up. All these fake-ass... There's sugar supplements that are supposed to be in place of sugar, but your body recognises some of them as sugar, and they're not all equal either. Erythritol, when I'm wearing the blood sugar monitor, as far as I can tell, is one of the good guys, yet it gets lumped in with sucralose, which your body gets confused about. So the simplest path to follow if you're time poor is, if your great-grandma wouldn't recognise it, it's probably processed. I don't like using the rule if it keeps for too long in the cupboard, because some great foods keep for a long time in the cupboard. Quinoa, brown rice, flour. A really good wholemeal flour can keep years for no problem. So it's not necessarily a good guide about how long food keeps.
There's a few exceptions, isn't there? There's quite a few that
frozen food can be fantastic if you're on a budget. Frozen spinach, frozen peas, frozen veg. Frozen veg, I know they got dates on them, but if you cook those 2 years later, yes, the nutrient profile might not be there, but it's a hell of a lot freaking better than a Eat Natural bar that's loaded up with God knows what. Sorry, if 100%. Eat Natural is a brand, I should probably be careful. But a brand that tells you to eat natural is likely a brand. I didn't mean to name it.
Yeah, no, but I think that's spot on, isn't it? And so if we're trying to get this education across, because I don't think I'm wrong in saying that the level of knowledge that you have is a million times higher than the average patient that comes to see us. How do we get that across? Like whether it be the sort of national advertising or the messaging we're putting in the consultation room. How can we get that message across effectively? And I'm asking you because actually as a comedian, you're very good at getting messages across in certain ways to connect with the audience. So how do we do that? How do we do it so they listen?
My wife is actually, based on all the weird and complex stuff. So I've started with cutting out sugar 12 years ago and trying to do a 5-minute workout. I did nothing before that. I was your classic Ginster's pasty eating comedian, and I did no exercise. Genetically, I am like my mum and like my alive and well granddad, unbelievably, given I'm 47, in that I'm naturally slim, not thin. And this is what people don't understand about slim. Really, particularly with women as well, it's dangerous, this, because women are like going on diets for their bums and their arms. I've got bad news, ladies. There's not a lot you can do really about your bums and your arms and your boobs, apart from weight resistance to tone them up. But, you're supposed to have bums and arms and boobs, regardless of what the internet says. The only fat you need to worry about is the belly fat. Visceral fat's the posh name, because that's, if you looked on the inside, it's sort of attached. It's going like poison ivy around your organs. So that's the one you need to worry about.
Totally. And if I can just jump in there just for the listeners, and so NICE updated the guidance to add in that central adiposity. So that's exactly what Russell was just saying. That's an independent risk factor for cardiometabolic disease, regardless of the BMI. If the fat is located centrally, that is going to increase your chance of type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, stroke. And the way to assess that, rather than on the scales, is to do a waist to height ratio. It's telling you how much of that fat is located there, rather than just where is weight distributed generally. But no, Russell,
absolutely, yeah. Because if someone like me who's trying to build muscle, I've put 2 kilos on in the last 2 years, but I've gone down 2 inches waist size. So I'm like 30 to 31 inch waist now, rather than 32 to 33 as I was a little while back.
Anyway, you're adapting the body composition, isn't it? So you're gaining muscle, losing fat, and so the BMI may seem like it's going up, but that's not. That's in fact going to improve your health outcomes, because muscle isn't just useful for looks and for movement like most people believe, but muscle is actually a metabolically active organ. It stores sugar. So therefore, when people, let's say with higher muscle bulk, eat a meal that contains sugar, they actually get lower sugar spikes, because the sugar's got places to go. It's got areas to be. And so the muscles is such an important thing that we need for our lives going forward and for longevity. And that brings me on to that next question, because
I never answered your language question. It's really, important.
Please.
It's a really important question you asked me. So I started by cutting out sugar, doing exercise, trying to lose belly fat. And Lindsay was watching me, and this has got more and more complex in a Darwinian way. as the 10 years ago, I've added here. Oh, I'll take 95% curcumin here. What if I did cardio one until my life was so complicated that unless you're incredibly privileged, like I might come from a council estate, but I live an incredibly privileged life now where I do my hobby for a living. I've got an excellent income. I've got the leisure time to do exercise. I've got the money to take literally 30 to 40 different supplements a day sometime. Now, Lindsay said to me, it was my wife that had the genius insight. She said, Russell, if you imagine boiling down what you're doing to an easy to follow program, an easy way to sum up exercise in language everyone can relate to, and an easy way to boil down evidence-based supplementation. She said to me, what are your top 7 things you've taken? And off the back of that, she's launched, I cannot tell you, the success actually has been a bit too much with Jolt. We're struggling to meet the orders. The appetite for simplified messaging. Okay, so this goes with the evidence-based supplement. So Jolt's got 7 ingredients boiled down to a once a day 3 pill. Great, that solves that. So people are discovering Jolt for evidence-based supplementation. But when it comes to diet and movement, the way it's communicated, if you're 16 stone or pre-diabetic or you're 60 years old and you've never exercised, it's very scary when people start talking about Virgin Active and gym membership and giving up all your favorite biscuits. And for some people, the husband might be gone and their only pleasure in life is watching Coronation Street and having a Kit Kat. So you don't realize what our well-meaning words, they're not just landing on deaf ears, they're landing on hostile ears because you're coming for what the only comfort a lot of people have got left, which is to curl up under a blanket, have a chocky biscuit and watch Coronation Street. So until we change the environment, the first thing I said, and simplify the messaging that can connect with normal people, nothing's going to happen except a lot of stick-thin people like you and me shouting about what halo-wearing goody-goodies we are. So that's our Jolt messaging. For our PR mailer, which we sent to our influencers, it had a big, thick book in it, 300 pages, and it said inside is Lindsay Kane's secret for diet and exercise, the full program, and it was blank. And on page 1, it said, don't eat shit, move a bit.
Yeah.
That's it. So walk faster when you walk the dog. Swap your Kit Kat out for a couple of squares of dark chocolate. Try and upgrade your bread. Try and make your own soups in the blend. Simple stuff that is affordable and do it forever. And what you'll find is when you get a little bit of a result from that first step, just like the way evolution works and we build an eye over millions of years, it seems impossibly complex, but we get there. You will then go, I got a bit of a buzz from that. Maybe I'll do 20 jumping jacks during the hour. Before you know it, you're doing 30-minute workout a day in your bedroom. It's bullshit proof. Exercise is bullshit proof if you do it at home. As soon as it's rainy or you've had a bad day, you've got a flat tire or the car's not taxed, there's the hurdle you were looking for to not go to the gym. So the simple solution is, pardon my French, fuck off the gym for now. What can you do in a single box room that gets your heart rate and your movement up? Now tell me a space you cannot do it in. You won't be able to find one.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Like some of the things that Russ touched there is that keystone habit. If you can just start with one little thing, it can become the keystone that, for example, let's say if you are going to do 5 minutes of resistant bands while the adverts are on and the TV, you do that for long enough, you feel good about that and that little gain. Yes, it's not going to transform your health and life on its own, but then you're going to be more likely to turn away that potentially bad habit. Maybe it's like a processed bar or something like that. And it's about trying to get those steps.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the doctor that was the American doctor, so you always have to say American doctor, that was influenced by Steve. So if you start doing 15 minutes a day, 3 times a week, your all-cause mortality risk drops by 15% over a year. So although we can say 5 minutes doesn't really change your health, in fact, you've taken a 5% risk of death off by moving a few elastic bands around while Coronation Street is on a break. I mean, do you want to... I always say to people, make it colourful to yourself. Do I want to meet my grandchildren? Do I care about what people are going to... One of the most useful exercises I did when I was upgrading my whole emotional, mental and physical health 15 years ago, I went on this self-development course called the Hoffman. So I was determined to win this big Edinburgh Prize. And I knew if I just ironed out the final creases in my health and my emotional health, it was so much more full on than I was expecting. But they did this brilliant exercise that anyone can do at home. It's a bit morbid, but I recommend it. Safe space, make sure no one's around. Lay down on the floor and imagine you're in your coffin looking up at your funeral and what all the people around you would say? Are they all saying, well, he had a long life and he was a lovely person? Fine. Make yourself a cup of tea, have a Kit Kat, watch Corrie. Or are they saying, what a shame. If she just moved for 5 minutes a day, she would have met little Lottie who's just been born. It's a really powerful exercise that the NHS should bloody prescribe, is to imagine your own future ailment. Lie down. It's a bit morbid. Don't do it if you don't feel it's safe. But for me, I was like, oh my God.
But it's giving you that perspective, isn't it? To look into the future. And I guess not only could you just do it thinking in your coffin, if let's say you feel that that's too much for the patient, you just ask them to live in the older self. What is it that they want to be doing when they're 80, 90? Do they want to be still going to the shops? Do they want to be still cleaning themselves? Do they want to still be able to go to the cafe and meet up with their friends? And if that's the case, then they need to start working now, not then. It's
and everyone focuses on the free cut. Yeah, well, look at Barry. He jogged his whole life. He was 11 stone. Bang, dropped down dead at 60. Undetected heart defect. That's my dad. He had an undetected bicuspid aorta. So went from stenosis for no reason other than bad luck of a genetic mutation. Of course, you or I, the show off health gurus, could drop down dead tomorrow or get a freak pancreatic cancer or whatever. You're reducing the odds of it happening. Don't focus on exceptions like me that does too much, or the housebound 30 stone person that doesn't do enough. There are plenty of healthy people that drop down dead and plenty of smokers who live to 90. But there's no point in focusing on the extremities. Interestingly, though, next time you've got a relative in a nursing home, have a walk round and tell me how many people you see with a high BMI in that nursing home. I'm yet to find one.
That's a really good point. And do you know what? Now that you mention it, I've never thought of that. But now that you mention it, I've been around many nursing homes, I can promise you. And
they're all thin.
Wow.
There's smokers, there's miserable people, there's sad people, there's people who eat a rubbish diet, there's people who eat processed foods, but there ain't no fat ones. I'm sorry, it's horrible. I'm just trying to shock you into the realization that the belly fat, it will kill you faster than cigarettes can. Get that in your head. It's very empowering. It's good. Be motivated. Be blackmailed by a Kit Kat. Put it to good use.
Got you. And so let's say if we've got GPs and nurses, let's say, listening to this, and they think, okay, how do I get that message across to the patient in a way that they're not going to be upset with me? They're not going to just not, go see someone else. How do we get that message across?
I think that's a colourful way of doing it, is saying, it's all bodies are beautiful. This is not about shaming anyone, but you just need to understand the risk, Mrs. Smith. You're over 60, you're this weight. Maybe I could illustrate it like this. The risk from smoking is this, and the risk from carrying the amount of body fat you have is this. So the weight you currently are is this times more dangerous than smoke. I think smoking is such a socially unacceptable, deadly thing now, that if we use that as a compared to smoking,
like the yardstick, then yes,
it's not a bad way of doing it, and it also mirrors a lot of the changes we need to make. We need to change the advertising, just like we did with cigarettes. We need to change the environment, just like we did with cigarettes. We got rid of it out of pubs. What could we do with junk food and processed food? Could we move it to its own area in the supermarket? Could we make it illegal to sell it in certain places like newsagents and counters, or close to other things that children might see? I'm sure there's lots we could do. Taxing, I'm not so sure about, because sometimes the wrong foods get taxed and people who are on a budget get punished.
Yeah, exactly.
And not all processed foods are equal. There's this pasta sauce called sujo or something at the moment. I mean, that's technically a processed food, but if you turn it over, it's tomatoes, olive oil, onions, garlic, a bit of lemon juice, and the tub's been sealed. So we don't want to put a tax on that because it's a long life food. It's a great alternative for time poor people. So this sort of blunt hammer of taxing people doesn't work. But communication, particularly from NHS, which is the closest thing this country has to a religion, would make a lot of difference. And we need to stop being so worried about offending people who are overweight. No one wants to shame and say that people are ugly, but we've got to stop celebrating body types that will kill you. You wouldn't celebrate smoke pouring out of two nose holes and goes, well, that nose is beautiful too, even if it's a cigarette smoky nose. So how dare you shame my smoky nose?
That's a common thing that clinicians tell me when I'm trying to encourage them to, let's say, promote physical activity, etc. That's offending the patient is the number one thing they say that's what stops me. Maybe if I start and then, and I feel like the patient is starting to get a little bit upset, I'll stop, I'll pull back because they don't want to complain. They don't want to just lose the rapport with the patient. And I wonder if that's causing too much inaction when sometimes patients do need to hear honest and non-judgmental and not shaming, as you say, but you do need to sometimes be honest. You can't hide these things in order to spare some, emotions.
But it's hard. You can only expect GPs and the NHS and physicians to do so much, because if the environment and the UK's government's attitude doesn't change, Tate and Lyle is, if everyone's like, oh, you can't bring down the sugar industry, but look what's happened to cigarettes.
Yeah.
Look what's happened. We can do this. We can make a change. And there's certain things shouldn't be being advertised, and at least not being advertised and pushed. There should at least be bigger warnings on the packaging.
Yeah, exactly. We have warnings on so much other things, things like even caffeine has warning, and we know that can be actually really quite beneficial when used correctly, but there is no warnings on sugar.
The warning should be you'll turn into a legend and achieve stuff if you drink it. That's what the warning on caffeine should be.
Absolutely. And like you dropped your age in there, and I think that was the thing that surprised me most, that you're 47 and
48 in 18 days. No, 17 days.
That blew my mind when I found it out. So I genuinely thought we were the same age, like generally, and we're not even close. If we're being honest,
I'm not in my 50s yet. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, we'll make that clear. But so for you, would you say that, like you've touched on it, but would you say that sort of the key thing there was move a bit, eat better food, try and keep like your emotional health and sort of that regulation and that in check, and then just getting kind of the right supplements into your life.
And sleep. Sleep.
Okay, would you say those are kind of the 5 key things that...
Yes, yeah. And the unfortunate 6th one that no one wants to talk about, and this was with careers, and there is a bit of luck thrown in.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be much happier if you acknowledge that luck exists. I'm a successful comedian because I just worked hard and I'm full of talent. Yeah. Plus, I did the Apollo on that date and that person saw it and this happened and that happened and I bumped into you on Steph and my wife thought of Jolt and we're making money. Luck does exist. So just embrace it. You can do all of these things and get hit by a car. You can do all of these things and get testicular cancer. That stuff happens. So you're better off bringing it into the mix as well, rather than using it as an excuse not to do the things. Go, yeah, luck does happen, but I'm going to control the quadrinity I can control. What goes in my mouth, how much I move, trying to get some good sleep hygiene going, and sleep and stress, and evidence-based supplementation. Yeah. I mean, when I started doing this 10, 12 years ago, no one was like, how old are you? They were like, oh, they sort of guessed roughly my age. All my friends laughed at me. Wayne, Lee, Dan, there's no magic pill. My friend Dan, who's a scientist, has now come with me on this journey and completely changed his opinion. Now, I love my mates, but they no longer look like me. They don't. Yeah. They are grey-haired, stiff-jointed, older men who I love. I adore them, but they are older. They are older than me. They are older. They don't just appear older. They want to do older things already.
They want to do
slow. They want to do slow. Oh, it's like back in our day. They're using that language. So I think, regardless of what anyone thinks when they look at me, there's obviously some on cellular internal stuff happening, because my neural pathways are still attracted to new music, new literature. What's next? What can I learn next? I come from a chavvy enough background to have been able to legally drink at my mum's 40th birthday. Okay. So I remember having a beer with my mum when she was 40 and I bought her driving lessons. And she was like, you don't understand, when you get to 40, you can't, it's really hard to learn new stuff. Now, oh my God, I'm 8 years past it. What utter shit that is.
Yeah.
You know, you need to turbocharge your biology, and it feeds into all the other aspects, the cognitive aspects, the emotional aspects, the zest for life. Me and Lindsay go out dancing regularly. And, of course, the appearance sometimes follows, sometimes doesn't. Wim Hof looks about 100 years old, whatever his name is, the ice bath one.
He is quite old, though, to be fair.
Yeah. But, you know, I've not done anything, touch wood, at time of recording, apart from I've had some medicinal Botox in a couple of scars. to reduce their appearance. I don't have anything artificially. I don't have anything in my face I wasn't born with, apart from one tooth. And if I look at pictures of myself 10, 12 years ago, I literally look older. Now, is that placebo? Is it coincidence? Is it genetics? We will never know because I don't have a twin. But I do have a twin who's taking Jolt, and he was always the unhealthy one, and the other twin was the fit one. And they've changed over the last year as he's been taking NMN and resveratrol and changing his exercise and changing his diet. So this stuff does work. But the other trick is to realize when you'll really need it and to start planning. Now, I think health span is closer. Think of it like a pension. No one wants to be paying into a pension when they're 30, 40. It's boring. I'm going to Ibiza twice this year. What need have I to think about a payment when I'm 65? But most of us are intelligent enough to start paying into our pension, knowing that we will retire one day.
Yes.
Think about your health span exactly the same. You'll probably get away without paying a penny in until you're about 31, 32, although I'd recommend starting at 25. But I would start making regular payments at 32 in the form of diet, movement, sleep, and then evidence-based supplementation. Keep paying in, and your pension will pay out the first time you slip on your ass and land on your hip aged 70. Your pension pot will say, how much have we got saved? Nothing. That's a broken hip and 30% likelihood of mortality in the following 12 months, 50% likelihood of life-changing injuries that change you forever. Have you got muscle? Have you got health around your hip? I don't know how much reduced it is or what the grading is, but I know people that are in shape and do weight resistance training bounce off their hip when they're 70, or they break it and recover.
Yeah, no, I think you've touched on it perfectly. Like using the pension analogy, I think will be great with patients, because if we move on to not talking about those that are right at the bottom of the physical activity ladder, those that are sedentary, because we've already touched on some of the things that we can do to get them active. But for those that we want to inspire them to lead the healthiest life, to get maximum health span, Russell has touched on really important aspects there. For example, we know that when patients have falls over the age of 65, that is a ticking time bomb to, unfortunately, death. We know 30%, that. We know
30% likelihood of mortality in the following 12 months.
Exactly. And the key elements there is we need strong muscles, we need good bone mineral density, and we know that strength training and also weight-bearing activities can help to promote that. But there's no point doing it when you're over 65. You have to do it now, because like the pension analogy, like sometimes we use the word reserve, because it will decline with age. Whoever tells you that won't decline, that they are unfortunately making that up. But if you build enough reserve, that decline on the graph will get to a point where it's still above a threshold that isn't going to lead to as negative a consequence. So it's just trying to just invest in your health, body, mentally, to just have that kind of tolerance, so that when things start to get bouncy and difficult and there's issues, you have that in the bank.
Absolutely. And even if you're over 65, so my mum's 70 and she's got genetically inherited rheumatoid arthritis from my great nan. Now, I've got the flare-ups. Well, I don't know if it was me, but she was having lots of flare-ups. But I'm a bit of an evangelist for curcumin, the active ingredients in turmeric.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, by taking 95% curcumin, it's really changed her life. Anyway, that aside, she can't lift weights, obviously, because she can't use her wrists. But she started squatting and attaching leg weights and doing sort of sideways leg raises and things like that.
What made her start doing that? What made her start?
Me.
So that's basically what we call behavior contagion, isn't it? So sometimes we can inspire one of our patients to get active, but what we don't realize is that they are now going and inspiring others, the family around them, their friends. So I just don't want to let.
I think what it is, Dr. Hussain, I don't want to let people over 65 off the hook and go, oh, well, what can I do? I'm 14 stone. I'm a 5'5" woman. I'm over 65. Might as well just enjoy my cakes and go out with a smile on my face. No, you too can start some really modest cardio activity and some strength exercises. Get 2 bags of the sugar that you're never going to eat again and do lateral raises with those during Corrie. Within 5 years, you'll be a better 70-year-old than you were a 65-year-old. Yes, it might be too late to start the pension, but you can really put some defenses in there. You will fall over at some point between 65 and 80. I fall over all the time now. Why is it going to stop when I'm older? You're going to fall.
Absolutely.
Bounce, don't break.
Yeah, spot on. And I think we've talked a lot about sort of the physical impacts, but we know that there's lots of evidence that staying active and moving and physical activity is beneficial for cognition, for the mind. And the rates of dementia at the moment are just going up and up and up. And I wonder, how do we get these kind of messages across that, look, yes, we want you to be active, yes, to reduce diabetes, and yes, to improve your risk of fractures, etc. But dementia is something that can rob people of the last years of their lives, and it can be so debilitating. Do you have any experience, any family members with dementia? What are your thoughts?
Of course, yes. Well, just so my mum was more or less raised by my nan's older sister. So my great aunt, my nan wasn't a very responsible mother. So my mum was raised both by her grandma, the one I was just talking about, and my auntie Eileen and Uncle Ivan. Both have made it to this year. I've only just buried the pair of them. They went within a few weeks. They made great old ages, both fantastic old ages. But Auntie Eileen, my great aunt, she had the fall we were just talking about. Up till then, no, sharp as anything, talking about alternative comedy, this and that. She had macular degeneration. She was blind. She was unaffected by it. I can't see. It doesn't matter, dear. Life's still a pleasure. We have our wine and salmon at lunchtime. Within 3 months of that fall, what's his name? What's she called? Feeling for names. Within 6 months, she'd sailed into darkness. Within 9 months, babbling like she's 13 again. Now, how can a fall on a hip produce years and years of plaque in the brain? To me, as a layman, it hardly makes sense, because when you look at dementia brain scans, it looks like plaque that's built up over many, many years. But I might even need you to explain.
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
I do need you to explain how if I break my hip, me that could be reciting events of the 20th century and being into culture and discussing something with my nephew, I can suddenly not be able to recall my husband's name within 3 months. Was the plaque there all along, but I'd found neural pathways around this brain plaque, and those neural pathways break down, or is something else breaking down after a fall?
So, really good question. So falls essentially is a huge trauma to the body's physiology, not just the actual force of the event, but you've got to think what happens after people have a fall and they fracture something. They're in bed, completely sedentary, lying down, losing muscle bulk, losing mental stimulation. They're seeing the same four walls for the next few weeks. They then have to have an operation, and that's another insult on the body. They then have to take lots of medications like opiates for pain, laxatives, etc. And all this does is increases the burden on the body's physiology, and it basically exposes weaknesses. So you were right in saying that there are potentially chinks. So she would have had some plaques there pre-existing, but her sort of tolerance, her body's capacity to overcome them is suddenly decreased. And that's why we see things like dementia. We see it's much more likely to get infections. It's way more likely to suddenly get other long-term health conditions crop up after incidences like a fall. So we're just getting rid of that reserve rapidly. That body's capacity to manage these things suddenly goes downhill. Even if we just look at being in a hospital bed for 5 days, you lose nearly a quarter of your muscle bulk. That's just 5 days. It's huge. It's huge.
How can you lose that much in 5 days?
It's because the body has to utilize it, because it's the muscles aren't being moved. They're not being stimulated.
So wait a minute. When I go on my all-inclusive, are you saying I should continue to go to the gym every day? Because I've worked really hard to grow a bicep.
No, because when you're on your all-inclusive, you're not lying in the lounge the whole time. You
haven't. Have you not been on an all-inclusive?
Maybe I need to come with you next time. And
I crawl on my belly to the buffet and then back.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, what we realise is, like, a hospital bed sedentary is so different, and also when the body's had an insult like a bone fracture, and when you are of that age, your susceptibility to losing that muscle is so much higher. When you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you'll lose a little bit, but your body can maintain it so much more because it has other things to rely on. Once you get older, you just don't have as many reserves elsewhere. And it is awful. It's one of the key things that we're trying to improve is the hospital stays. Just having the extra few days longer in a hospital, that is going to negatively impact your health. And
Yeah.
sometimes families can be quite, upset because we're trying to push discharge. We're trying to get them out of hospital. But that's because every day they stay in the hospital, it increases the risk of them getting further complications, whether that's a pneumonia or whether that's even another
Yeah.
fall in unfamiliar environment or whether
Yeah.
that's deconditioning. That's why we're always so eager. And one of the key problems is we can't get patients out of hospital because we don't have the social care. And so
Yeah.
we're just exacerbating health issues because they're just staying in an environment that is just eating away at all their reserves. And you can't train it back. Trying to get, for
Yeah.
example, a 75-year-old to train back that muscle bulk, that is not
Yeah.
going to be easy.
And also, the other problem we had with Lindsay's nana, she had the fall, came home. But if you've already accustomed yourself to this sort of chocolate bar soap opera, watching Catchphrase with Stephen Mulhern lifestyle, when you come home in recovery, you're probably less likely to walk down the hallway to use the loo, and you're
Yeah.
probably going to start asking for a commode next to the chair, which is exactly what happened to Lindsay's nana. So even when she got home, she had this little window to try and do some walking just around the house. Even then, a lot of 80-year-olds come home and go, well, I'm not going to do it. And then it spirals further. So the sort of inactivity that you have become embedded in your 60s and 70s is the opposite pension. This is a debt that you've generated between 40 and 60, comes home to roost should you have a fall and survive it. That debt needs paying, and that debt will be you can't be asked to even get up and go to the loo. You won't be able to get the motivation. If you've got the habit of fierce independent movement, you're probably more likely once you get home, if you can, to toddle down the hallway to use a toilet rather than want a bedpan or a commode and the bed downstairs and all of that.
Yeah. And do you think that the culture of caring that we have here is potentially making it worse? I went to a talk. In fact, I was with your wife Lindsay at the time, where one of the leading experts, Sir Mulgray, said that carers can be a huge detriment to older people staying healthy and active, because that, let's say, daughter going to grab that thing from the kitchen for them, or grab the remote, or do this. I'll help you here. I'll get the shopping. I'll do this. Are we just accelerating the deconditioning?
Yes. And also, complete curveball. If you're a new parent, think about how you're training your children, because these are habits they will establish for a lifetime, right up until they are little old ladies and little old men. I see it all the time with people that had a different childhood to me. And my dad probably went a bit too far. You're on your own at 16, no help with the uni and all that. But you see other people who they're 35-year-olds still getting run to the train station. Yeah. Oh, don't worry, I'll pick up the shopping. Oh, I'll help you with your mortgage, or I'll do this. It's all very well. But this over caring for the generation below you, it starts earlier than you think. So if you've got teenagers, or even if you've got a 7-year-old like me, start getting those life habits of doing things for yourself early. You will use them from when you're 7 to when you're 87. Exactly. And this culture of hand out someone do it for me in life, sometimes it's needed as a safety net, but you should be able to toddle down the hallway to use the loo. If you're 8 weeks after a hip operation, you're 75. If you physically can, why are you choosing not to? And it comes from years and years before, like this reverse pension, this debt of sedentary, well, someone will do it for me. It's hard to get out of that habit.
No, but you're absolutely right. We need to, it's not being uncaring. In fact, it's caring more, because you want them to have those skills, develop the strength, develop the resilience in order to be able to do those things. So let's say if they want to grab something from the kitchen, support them with that. Go and help them get to the kitchen rather than just leaving them on the sofa in that time. It's so important. And I love that you chucked in how we communicate with the younger generation, because this is the exact same thing. I guess
where it starts. It starts there. A lot of the 40 and 50-year-olds in your social group that are like, oh, nothing's gone right, the world hates me. Most of them, if they're not, admittedly, some people have had horrific existences and recovering from abuse, and that's what's broken them. But a lot of them have had too much done for them by mummy and daddy, and they have not developed the muscle, the metaphorical muscle, we've been talking about literal muscle, to lift and change things on their own. And that will follow through to the habits in old age. You want that fierce screw you, I'm going to get the tin of beans. It's not safe, Uncle Ivan. Well, can walk with me. That's what my Uncle Ivan was like. The only reason he died is because Auntie Eileen had gone. He waited, I think he waited to the day. Is it within 6 months? He died 6 months and 1 day after Auntie Eileen. So that's just, he'd done his lot. He was 94. He'd had enough. He's gone. My granddad,
a very good age.
My granddad, on the other hand, my mum's dad, he just won't give in. Leaky heart valve, still driving, it was my cousin's wedding the other week. He was there, shots at the bar, walked to the hotel. He can walk, but he's not allowed to run. He can drive, but he's not allowed to go on the motorway. And he does all the things he's legally allowed to do right up to the letter of the law. Him and my Nana Pat. They go on holiday. They have an active life. 93 this year. Fully active. Only stopped playing bowls because he's been told to by the doctor because of the leaky valve. But was playing competitive bowls up until 2 years ago. That's the 90s I want.
Yeah,
he's probably one of my inspirational figures, my granddad. I mean, during lockdown, I had a stand-up routine about it. As you'll know, any doctors watching or listening to this, is the most socially non-compliant, most difficult group were old people like my granddad, who, apologies for the language, when we told him it was lockdown, said, I'm nearly dead, fuck off, and went out without a mask on anyway. So invincible did he feel. That's too far, but it's that spirit that we need.
Yeah, exactly. We need that determination. We need that drive. And we need to find ways of getting that spark in our patients, that are coming towards us. Let's say they come for their health check, and we just need to encourage them to see the benefits. And I really do think, using that analogy that Russ had of the pension, I really do think that's a great way for them to understand, as well as that smoking yardstick. Because I think everyone understands, the implications of smoking. And if we can just compare it to that, it's suddenly in a metric that they get. Because if we talk about 1 in 6 deaths in the UK is due to inactivity, that 20% less active, you lose them. Them. They're just numbers, that they're meaningless.
4 times more deadly than smoking is powerful, isn't it? All-cause mortality. I don't know what the British figures are. Those are American, but I guess they'll be the same. Yeah, we're talking anything you could die from across the board of all body types, but in your age group, you're 4 times more likely to die if you're the sedentary, overweight, non-exerciser than a smoker who's 50% more likely to die than the populace. You're 200% more likely to die than the populace. 200% more likely to die of all-cause mortality. For what? A biscuit. I even understand smoking. At least you get a buzz off it. At least it's got an addictive chemical in it. Come on, let's fight back.
Yeah, no, such a good point. And we're coming to the end of the podcast here. And I think one thing that I just want to highlight, it was Monday this week, and I'm going to put a post out on social media about it, but I was doing a musculoskeletal clinic. So these are for people with difficult knees, and we potentially inject them and all sorts. And one gentleman, mid-50s on his medical record, but he looked easily late 60s, early 70s. Already, barely walks. He's lost kind of that verve for life. He's very low, struggling with his mental health. And I just felt my sympathy was to the max. And I was just trying to engage and trying to support him to just get that little bit of movement in. And then the next patient came in and said, oh, doc, I've locked my bicycle next to yours outside the surgery. And I looked at his age on the medical record. He was 94. 94, and he'd cycled 4 miles through the rain.
40 years older than your previous patient.
Exactly. And I honestly would have said that he was maybe late 60s, early 70s.
Crazy.
Honestly, that's why I would have put it. I'm not just saying that. And I asked him, I was like, wow, how are you still cycling? That's fantastic. He goes, 15 minutes a day. I touch my toes. I do some shadow boxing. I do some stretches. I get some bands. I just do 15 minutes. Do you know what I mean? I have it after breakfast. I just do that. And that's all I do. And I just said, 15 minutes every day for 94 years, that's a hell of a lot. And I think that's the key message here. We don't want people to become marathon runners. We don't want them to, suddenly become bodybuilders. We just want them to get a little bit of movement, enjoy the movement, and have fun doing it. Dancing is just an example. Yeah. You mentioned that you go with Lindsay. That's just fun. I don't even think of it as a physical activity, do you?
Yeah, it is. It is the way I do it. I'm down to the floor, deep squat.
I've seen it. And it's 100% true.
It's important to mention this, that people that, like your first patient, have gone so far past it. particularly men, I think this is what killed my dad. I call it ostrich syndrome, a disease of the neck where you want to thrust it into the earth because you're so far past being able to do anything. You'd rather not know what your weight is. My dad had chest pains, but was a really fit bodybuilder, age 62. So he went to the doctor because he think, well, there can't be anything wrong with me. I'd rather not know. Ostrich disease is deadly. A middle-aged woman who might be late 50s, 60s, who's already overweight, it feels like weight loss is a mountain she can't climb, would rather not step on the scales and not know. This ostrich step is the most important first step. Expose yourself to the knowledge about your own body. That's the one fear you need to get past. You're better off learning what it is. There might be some placebo or negative spiral effect from learning it, maybe, but I don't know. But it's.
No, I think you're right, and I think maybe moving away from the body image results and the weighing scales results, just follow the process. Because even if you don't lose weight, but you're now more active, you're eating healthier, you got better sleep. I promise you, regardless of the scales, you're going to have huge health benefits from that. And I think that's what we need to get across to patients. Just do the process. And invariably, if you do it for long enough and you did it for well enough, those things do come. But if you're just focusing on the only reward being, let's say, being able to fit into that dress or to look a certain way, that takes a long time, no matter what anyone says. And if you're waiting for that, you'll quit before you get there.
It's worth mentioning as a side note. I realise we're both sort of pepper armies with hair on, so we're probably not the best people to be making these comments because we've both my metabolism. I'm eating 3,000 calories a day at the moment, and I lost a kilo last week. I'm furious. I lost 100 grams last week.
That's because you're constantly on the move, Russ.
I'm trying to put weight on. But those of us that have been born with slower metabolisms or genetically we're from a population that have got slower metabolism for whatever reason. By the way, if you want to read a book, it's fascinating to learn the reasons we do have slower metabolisms, is starving yourself short term to get into that dress or into those swimming trunks, lads, is not just unsustainable because you won't stick to it because it's so punishingly horrible. There is lots of evidence now that you are slowing your metabolism down into starvation mode. So if you're someone who gets fat on 1,600 calories a day, you wait and see what you're going to be like. I'm not slagging off Slimming World. It serves a brilliant social function. But if you drop down to 1,200 calories a day for 6 months, your body will adapt possibly permanently to only need 1,400 calories a day forever. Eat more good stuff, move more. Much more pleasurable way of getting in shape on every level we've been talking about. Yeah. Starvation is not just dangerous physically, it's also counterproductive medium term, not even long term.
It has to be a balanced, healthy lifestyle because, the body is great at trying to stay alive. So if you barely give it any calories, as you say, it will make measures in order to survive off that amount. And you're right, you're just going to go through a lot of difficulty. And when people then fail and quit, they then feel even worse because they're like, they failed to stick at it. They haven't lost the weight. And it just continues the cycle of, of pain. And I think that the key message that we need to get across to patients is healthy lifestyle, balance, small steps, but continually make new steps. It's not like you make that small step and that's it. Everything's going to be fixed. No, you make a step, you succeed. You make another step, you succeed. And then you've got a staircase that after a few years, you can be looking back and be like, wow, how do I feel now? What's my sleep like now?
And you start to want to do that. Crucially, you start to want to do those steps. You think, oh, well, I've been standing up in the ad breaks. I'm going to do some jumping jacks. You look in the mirror and
you want to add something on. You want to learn something more. And your perception of the world is different, isn't it? How you're going to interact with the food that's coming through. It's changed. Your identity has changed.
I started from, I'm going to stop eating refined sugar. That's the first thing I did without exercise. That was my first tiny step. The next one was 5 minutes a day, HIIT workout jogging on the spot. And here I am, 12 years later, I have to force myself to have a rest day. I dread rest day. All I want to, just go in there. It's not exercise if I walk fast on the treadmill. Yes, it is. You're 47. Don't overdo it or you'll injure yourself. So I'm at the opposite end now where I can't get enough. Now, what's next? Let's start a supplement business. What exercise can I do that's different? Let me sign up to a personal trainer.
That's what you're doing.
It's the best type of addiction you'll ever get in your life.
Brilliant. Well, Russell, thank you so much for your insights, your thoughts.
My pleasure.
I'm so glad that it gives a balance because we've covered so many interesting topics with so many interesting speakers, and I think this has been really worthwhile to understand what it's like for someone to individually transform their life and to try to get that messaging across in an effective way that Russell can. Any last messages that you'd want to get out to the GPs,
Yes.
the health and wellbeing coaches, the social prescribers that all listen here?
Yes.
What would you say?
I'll answer finally the first question you asked me. If it feels safe to do so, particularly in the United Kingdom, humour is an amazing tool. It's not for everyone. Not everyone's blessed with the ability to read the situation like me. But if you are someone, and I know a lot of doctors do have amazing sense of humour, saying don't eat, obviously you wouldn't swear, but by saying don't eat shit, move a bit, I get a giggle, and I've Trojan horsed a serious message under almost a joke, a silly reductive line. I did a stand-up routine about Slimming World. I'm still performing it, about how Brits are addicted to a nothing lots culture, about how we love, I've had a lettuce leaf every day so I can have a bin bag of Snickers on Saturday. Like, I use satire and humour to illustrate it. Sometimes rather than you're overweight and you got, 4 times more likely to die is less effective than using a bit of humour and banter. It's like, are you in the kebab after 1 a.m. club? I know I was all through medical school. You know what I mean? Humour is incredibly powerful. We use it in funerals. We use it during breakups. I bet the cancer ward is one of the places where people are joking with each other the most. It's a survival. It's evolved somewhere back in human history. I mean, babies laugh before language, okay? It's wired into human beings as a survival mechanism. If it wasn't, funny blokes like me wouldn't be married to fit women. It's literally attractive to human females, men that are funny. Now, that has to have a survival benefit in our past. It's not just I'm interesting at a dinner party. Back in the day, my tribe probably got clubbed to death less if I was able to make our aggressors laugh and use humour to diffuse conflict. Humour has a survival benefit. So if you are a medical professional and it feels safe and the person's opening up to you and they've got a twinkle in their eye, don't be shy about using humour to deliver messaging. When it's done with graphs and seriousness, you lose a lot of people.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And the rapport that you can gain, even just thinking about it now, I don't think I've done it intentionally, but the patients that I've had the most success with are the ones that I've managed to connect on that kind of level, where we remove the barriers of doctor patient, and it's just two people that are having a conversation with some often humor and just trying to understand what it is that they want and how we can support that. I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Russell.
By the way,
appreciate it.
Viagra and aspirin is the answer to that question.
If that doesn't work, that's the alternative.
Every man past 40, 75 milligrams, microdose of a bit of Viagra, 5 milligrams a day for your testosterone, lads. Trust me, you won't look back.
Yeah, it definitely get a lot of physical activity. That's for sure.
That gets the blood pumping, and you can stay sat down.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
All
Bye.
the best and
Thank
take
you.
care.
Bye.